Okay, so it's about 4:45, so we can probably start. I should probably introduce myself. I'm Barb Hallock. I work for the Campus Bridging and Research Infrastructure Department within UITS Research Technologies. And so today we're going to talk about campus bridging in IT-28. So first of all, I thought we would talk about just a quick definition of what campus bridging is. And so the general idea is that campus bridging is the idea that cyber infrastructure resources should operate seamlessly for the user, regardless of where they're it shouldn't make a difference to the user if they're running on their own laptop or on, say, Kraken out at NICS, which is a supercomputer. So this is a combination of hardware, software, and support resources, and also some outreach, which is my major piece of the puzzle. So a large part of the campus bridging is of course, the cyber infrastructure resources, but that's not all of it. People need to be aware of the resources that are available. They need to be able to operate in a fashion that's easy and seamless for the user, and there need to be easy to understand and well-written educational tools available for new users. And of course, also a decrease in the number of barriers to entries are a big deal as well. So that's the kind of things that campus bridging as a discipline attempts to adjust. So then campus bridging and IT-28. So first we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about IT-28, just go through that, make sure we have a common vocabulary here. So that the IT-28 policy is collectively referred to as the cyber risk mitigation responsibilities. These affect everybody who makes use of the IT environment, from President McRobbie all the way down through our newest freshmen. And it is each user's responsibility to make use of those services in ways that minimize the risks. So now let's talk about major risks. This is actually a slide borrowed from the, Anurag Shankar's HIPAA presentation that he did training-wise recently. And at least for HIPAA data, the biggest type of data breach is actual just theft. And then unauthorized access and some other, piecemeal things. And the big lesson here is that the major thing that you can do to secure your IT is to put it in a secure facility. Well, great, good thing we've got that nice data center here in Bloomington, with the set up to handle an F5 tornado. And then where centralization is not possible, it is the responsibility of everybody in the manager area to formally document who's doing what and what they're doing. So some of the benefits of this transition, the big one, of course, is that the smaller departmental IT folks don't have to worry about doing all of this managerial stuff over systems that IU provides anyway. So that means that they can focus their time on projects that have more impact at the local level. This also minimizes the risk of natural disaster-related loss of resources and data. There's also a decreased environmental impact because you're having to air condition a smaller space, so you're using less electricity. So now that we kind of talked about what IT-28 is and what campus bridging is, I thought I'd talk about some of the bridging resources that we have here at IU. So the first one that I want to call attention to is actually HelpNet Technology Services, which is a consolidated IT department available to the entire university. And so the real bonus here is it allows for the smaller departments who don't necessarily have one whole FTE of IT work to sort of pay into that service and share the cost. So the next one is Globus Online, which is a data transfer tool that allows you to move data between any two endpoints. The endpoint can be anything from your laptop to, Big Red 2. You set up a transfer and you start it, and then it tells you when you're done. Pretty simple, makes that transition a lot easier, and they also advertise complete end-to-end support. And this is a big one because in just the past 3 months, between campuses and the national XE network, which I'll get into in a minute, Globus Online has moved over 630 terabytes in just one direction. So this is being used a lot. Another thing that we have that's going to make the bridging easier is the Cyber Infrastructure Gateway. The IU Cyber Infrastructure Gateway is going to allow you to do all sorts of tasks relating to your research and your publication from a single, what we call a portal, basically. And that's currently a work in progress, so it's going to look different from day to day, maybe even week to week. But you can check that out at cybergateway.uits.iu.edu. And I believe that it is also available as a mobile site. So that means you can also get your work done straight from your mobile device. Another service we have is called the Quarry Condo Computing nodes. Basically, the idea is if you have some computational needs, but don't necessarily have the kind of computational needs that would justify setting up an entire cluster that you then have to administer, you could purchase a node on one or more nodes on Quarry. You'd have a separate queue, and your calculations don't affect the normal queue or vice versa, and you can just get your work done quicker. Also in the pay for cycles area, and another way to really nicely offload that management cost is the Rockhopper service. This is actually owned by the company Penguin Computing, but located here in Bloomington in the data center. And so there are some nice considerations that we get for hosting. And so and you can literally set this up in 10 minutes if you're at IU. And just be online, transferring your data, and just get your answers. And this is really especially good for people who have the budget, but not really the time to get an experiment done. So that's a great option as well. Then there is the research files system, which is free to anybody at IU, and currently in the upgrade process. So it'll be more scalable. It'll have new methods of access. And the other big thing is that it's going to be replicating all data between Bloomington and IUPUI. So you upload something to RFS, and then assuming you keep the copy on your laptop, that's immediately 3 copies that you get. That physical loss of files is a big one. I can't tell you guys how many times I talked to just a despondent PhD student who had 1 copy of the dissertation on a flash drive, and the flash drive is no longer responding. This is not a good way to be handling your data, as I'm sure you all know. So more on RFS. It is best suited for relatively small files, files that are regularly updated, frequently accessed, or shared, especially group project work. RFS is great for that. And that is available to anybody other than undergrads, basically, just straight out, and then undergrads and non-IU collaborators with a faculty sponsor. Another option for service is the Scholarly Data Archive, and this will also be a 3-for-1 deal. It's co-located, and therefore you get 2 copies per one. 42 petabytes of storage, and yeah, so this is for large-scale data archives. And then finally, if you need to store your published work or your data sets, then that's ScholarWorks, and that is also free to anyone at IU. And there's just a whole laundry list of things here that you can post there and then have available to the wider university and also the public community. I also want to talk about some groups that are doing campus bridging things here at IU. I also want to take a second to say that this is by no means an exhaustive list of things that could be considered campus bridging. It's just that we sort of focused on research for today. So the National Center for Genome Analysis Support, or NCGAS, is one of our major partners. They're here at IU. It's a 5-year NSF grant to provide cyber infrastructure resources and support to genomics researchers. So they are doing a lot of important science. So their laundry list of computers that they work on is here. These are all huge systems. Their website, ncgas.org, will have more information. And then there is the Advanced Visualization Laboratory. So they're really here to help researchers take the data that they have produced and turn it into something that you can look at, interact with maybe. And so they break it up into displays and systems, visualization and virtual reality, and then advanced visual arts and media. More information at the website again. Shout out for Open Science Grid. They do technical services and collaborator support for researchers doing heavy science. including, I'm fairly certain, the Large Hadron Collider is an OSG project. And then finally, the Extreme Science and Engineering Discovery Environment, that's XSEED. As I mentioned, that's a 5-year NSF grant to the NCSA, and IU participates in XSEED and has a couple of XSEED resources that we provide. We are, the sort of tagline for XSEED that's been used a lot is it's a project, an institution, and a set of services. And so there's really 3 separate distinct ideas that word XSEED refers to. So these are some of the research type options that we have beyond the standard intelligent infrastructure and et cetera that is available to the wider Indiana University community. And then finally, I want to finish up today by talking about a small department here at Indiana University that just recently completed its centralization efforts. The Indiana Institute for Disability and Community is a small department under the OVPRA, that's the Office of the Vice President for Research Administration. And there's about 80 staff members and 3 IT people. So they got a lot that they got to do. Much like a lot of smaller IU departments, they feel that even though they're part of IU, they're their own separate entity. And so that was a real challenge for them in centralizing. However, prior to IT-28, when they started this project, they tried to adopt the culture of centralizing their IT resources whenever possible. The kind of great quote is, "We don't have the luxury of the resources to manage have a person managing servers full time." So as of now, IIDC has moved everything except one box that's not in production all over into the data center or into the intelligent infrastructure, and all new resources will be going into II. So this is actually something that they began with an old director who actually came back to consult for the IIDC when they began their centralization. And so this was something that they started ahead of the IT-28 announcement and also finished just recently. And they have found actually that it's been a good thing, especially for their IT staff, right? Centralization allows Scott Myers, that's their data analysis person, is pretty happy that he doesn't have to spend time managing servers. It's also allowed for them to pilot some new projects that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to have the support time for. And then, of course, also the physical space savings of just not having all of those servers in a dedicated closet means now there's more space. So the IIDC handles a lot of privileged information, and so having those resources centralized means that they have less chance of a data breach, because as we saw in that earlier slide, the biggest, like almost half of all data breaches, at least when we're talking about HIPAA information, is theft, like misplaced laptops, things like that. And so that's the biggest help to them, I think. And at that point, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up and open the floor for questions. Okay, I guess nobody has any questions. All right, thank you all for coming.